Hello and welcome to the Venue Success Podcast. I'm your host, Tirzah Caffee, and our theme in season 2 is Tools of the Trade, the Pros Behind the Process. And today I am joined by my dear friend, Leah Weinberg, owner of Weinberg Legal. Welcome to the show, Leah.
Thank you so much for having me.
You guys, today is going to be spicy. I'm so excited to have you here. We were just chatting a little bit before we got started about how these contract conversations are some of the hottest topics in the wedding industry as a whole, but I know a lot of us as venue owners, we got a lot more skin in the game. So I'm really excited to talk with you today. But of course, you know, it is time for Crazy Stories with Tirzah because people have lost their minds. Okay, so here's the story for you today, Leah. And I told her before we started, I'm like, I'm not telling you the story. I'm not giving you a heads up. And fair warning, before I tell you what I did, I want you to know I've grown much beyond this. I've matured so much. I've learned from my mistakes. So just know right off the bat, what I'm getting ready to tell you, I do not condone. This is bad advice. Do not do what I did. Okay, so this was like way back in the beginning of when we started our venue. So this is probably 20, I don't know, it was over 10 years ago. And we had a storm come through, and we have a historic property that has a lot of old trees, and they're pecan trees and have a very shallow root. And so it has been the fear of my life ever since we opened that place of like big rainstorms. And when it rains for a long time, these big trees just gently fall. So we had a tree fall, and it was like the day before a very busy wedding weekend. And I happened to have been out of town when this happened, and I was interacting with my managers and trying to figure out what to do. And of course, it is one of those high touch, we call them pink tape, but pink tape, like high maintenance, bridezilla type of situations. And the tree fell, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what are we going to do? And, you know, of course, it wasn't in any place that, and I think this is important to say, it wasn't in any place that hindered their event from going on. It was kind of in the back part of the property. It was next to our reception space, over kind of by the fire pit. But again, like, they could still use it. We taped it off. Like, it didn't inhibit their event in any way. But Tirzah, the recovering people pleaser that I am, thought that it would be really good customer service of me to offer the family a $500 discount just for the fact that I knew it was a bit of an eyesore and a bit of an inconvenience that little portion of the property could not be used. And so the dad, who I have no idea if he was a lawyer or what he was something, but he told me that that was basically me admitting that there was something wrong with the facility, and that he used that as a cause, that he said that he wanted me to refund, that he was going to sue me, and that he wanted me to refund their wedding because this thing that happened on our property. And it all circled back to the fact that he told me I admitted fault by offering them a $500 discount. I will tell you, like, I don't know, like, and, you know, we went back and forth. We did not get sued. I think I gave him a little bit more money off just to have him go away, because sometimes it's worth that than to get into a lawsuit. And of course, now we've worked with our attorneys to create general releases, and we understand how to like do that and not just like cash under the table situation. Anyway, but I learned so much from that situation that throwing money at someone, or even I would say not abiding by your contract. Actually, that's something we should talk about today, because we have people that talk to me all the time about, well, we have a no cancellation rule. Like, what should I do? And I'm like, if you have it in your contract, abide by your contract. Anyway, let's circle back to that. So I decided that I never again would give someone money back in a situation like that. If there was something that happened because of weather related things that were outside of my control, that I wouldn't do that again. Tell me like your feedback about that, a scenario like that, because I don't think that this is also uncommon for people to deal with.
Yeah. In that particular situation, I think my advice is never to give money back unprompted, because it opens the door. I wouldn't say, and it all really depends on how you phrased things and like the correspondence and all of that stuff. Like, I wouldn't automatically say it is an admission of guilt. but it 100% opens the door. And I've seen
Yes.
it in another context with a different type. It was a vendor who has like big heart, felt like they didn't perform their best on a day. Like there was a lot of venue issues, and they unprompted set like refunded money to their client. And then the client used that as opening the door to do an additional cash grab. And so, yeah, I would say never offer to give money back unprompted. Only start that conversation if the client complains and asks for it. And then in that situation, it'll very much depend on what the contract says and, what do you need to make these people go away potentially or avoid litigation. That all comes into play. But yeah, so don't ever offer money back unprompted. Save that decision for after a client actually complains about something.
I think it's so difficult for people that are in the service industry. We are all like this. Like we're all like we are some of the hardest workers out there, right? And it's like if anything doesn't go perfect, like we immediately like take the blame. And that is exactly what I did. And I'm like, anyway, lesson learned, never did it again, but sometimes we learn the most important lessons by making mistakes, though, and
Yeah,
I think
we
it's
learned the
just
hard way.
exactly, exactly. So, anyway, welcome to the show, Leah. I'm so excited to have you here. Anyone that has been in the industry for any amount of time already knows who Leah is. We know and love her. And you really have such a fantastic reputation in the wedding community. And I'm just humbled and grateful to have you here today. So tell us about yourself and tell us a little bit about your story of like, okay, went to law school and all this stuff, but why, of all places, why the what? Maybe you ask yourself that every day. Why the wedding industry? So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I know, it's so funny. It's been such an interesting journey here. So I started out, my first career was as an attorney. I was an attorney for quite a good chunk of time, but very early into that career, I realized I needed to be my own boss. And I knew I ultimately needed to have my own business because everywhere I was, whether it was a firm, whether it was a company, I was always looking at how things were being run. And I was like, why are they doing it this way? We could probably do it better this way. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was a great employee. I did a very good job for people. I never told them that I had better ideas about they could do things better. But it was just an observation. And so I had my eye on starting a business and I brainstormed a lot of different ideas. I almost opened a doggy daycare or a dog walking service. I like to say that I came dangerously close to enrolling in pastry school because I thought I wanted to open up a bakery. And fortunately, I have a friend in the restaurant industry who was like,
Don't do it.
he was like, you need to love it. He's like, you're going to be up at 4 a.m. baking every day. And I was like, fair point. I feel like it would be fun and cool, but that I was not as committed as like that would
Yes.
require. And then one day this idea of event planning popped into my head and I was like, oh, that's a good fit for the things that I'm good at in terms of like project management and juggling a ton of things at once and dealing with people and creative problem solving, staying calm under pressure, like all the things. And it's like, oh, that's really interesting. So it just kind of sat in the back of my mind for a little bit. And then yes, admittedly, I'm one of those people that I planned my own wedding. I did have a coordinator. I did have a month-up coordinator, though, to be fair. I knew enough then to even know I
Okay,
needed
good
to do
girl.
that. But like planned and kind of designed my own wedding, and I thought it was fun and frankly easy. And I know that is not a normal reaction for most people who are planning weddings. And so I was like, okay, I think I want to give this a try. So about a year, I started taking small steps to get the business off the ground. About a year, little over a year after my own wedding, I had my first official wedding as Color Pop Events. I had kind of always intended to do more corporate stuff because I figured given my background as a lawyer, like that would be a better fit, but weddings just took off and happened to work. So that was, yeah, I started Color Pop in 2013. And then, as we know, COVID happened in 2020, especially in New York City. We were stuck at home for 14 months. And coming out of that, people changed, like the clients changed, vendors were just having such a hard time with like being short staffed, but also super busy. And yeah, I couldn't handle the people part anymore. Decided to step away from wedding planning and what back to being a lawyer in the beginning of 2023. And then earlier this year, just a month or two ago, I launched my own firm, Weinberg Legal. And so while I work with all types of small business owners and creative entrepreneurs, my bread and butter is obviously wedding and event professionals. Since I was a planner, I've seen everybody's contracts. I've worked with all of you. I understand your businesses in a way that like another attorney who's not in the industry would. And so I call it my happy accident because I knew that it made sense to go back to doing this, but I had no idea like how like successful and popular this was going to be. So yeah, it's my little happy accident to be back here.
I love that happy accident. That's pretty great. My dog does that actually every time she sees me.
Oh God, speaking of, my parents had a 95-pound boxer who had that problem. And
Big dog that has that problem.
yeah, you can imagine the size of I mean, you can edit this out if you feel like it, but the size of a bladder on a boxer, he would walk through like 3 rooms in the house when somebody would like get home from work or get home from school. Yeah. So
I'm not editing this out. I think that's fan-freaking-tastic. I love that.
What kind of dog do you have that does this?
We have a Cavapoo. You guys, we have so digressed. Anyway, the most precious, she's my best friend. But like, and it's just like 2 or 3 like little dribbles, enough to be high. I'm like, you were almost perfect, but you just have to have this one thing. Anyway, it's so funny. You know, I like what you said about having a business professional that knows this industry. We just had Justin with Nuptial and he does insurance. And we were having a similar conversation because it's like the insurance agent that we had, it's like they just don't understand some of the risk management elements of throwing parties like we do, especially as venues. I was having a similar conversation with a CPA, and it's like there are, you know, even like things that they know that we could do as small business owners that sometimes like these, you know, I don't know, like I'm just imagining like a nerd sitting in a cubicle, you know, it's just like they're just, you know, like punching the numbers in and not thinking like creatively, right? Yes. And it's like, it's so important to have people that understand weddings and entrepreneurship and all of that stuff combined. So
100%.
So, okay, let's get right into this with some of these pitfalls with contracts, because as a coach, you know, it's one of the first things out of the gate that I do with anyone. I'm like, send me everything that you have. I want to look at it. And I don't give like advice necessarily towards that direction because I'm like, I'm a firm believer that every venue should have, not necessarily on retainer, but I mean, I did, but like they need to have access to a good attorney at all times so that if something comes up, they have someone that they have a relationship with. So
100%.
So talk to me about some of the pitfalls. And again, our audience are venue owners for the most part. So talk to me about some of the big pitfalls that you see venues make in their contracts. And I know that's a total huge question.
Yeah. Well,
but give me a couple.
Yeah, there's 2 to 3 big things that come to mind. The first one is it's kind of like a business thing combined with your contract thing. So the first one is setting expectations with the client as to what your venue does, because every venue is different. Like even amongst full service venues, like they're still going to have their quirks and their nuances and their differences. And I know we all forget, like we're doing this every weekend. Some people are doing it multiple times a weekend, but we forget our clients, they have no idea. Yeah. They like things that we take for granted or things that we assume that people would know, they have no idea. So with the setting of expectations, it's like what comes with your venue? How many hours are they getting with your venue? How much setup time do they get with the venue? What staff of yours is there? Like, for example, in a raw space, do you have somebody there who's basically just a key holder who lets people in and out? Or do you have somebody there who does kind of act more as a manager and like can help with the flow of the events? Like, what do these people do? What are their roles? Like, clients don't understand, they don't know. And so be specific about if it is full service, what food package are they purchasing? What bar package? How much time? How many people? What's included in that? Like, how do the tastings work? How many options do they get? And so make sure the client understands what they're getting. And then your contract should back all of that up by being that detailed in terms of what they're getting.
I gotta ask you this because this is so, so very common. There's so many things that relate to that. Like, so we had a policy and guideline at my venue, and it was, I don't know, 6 or 7 pages long, but it wasn't all like rules. It was like, this is how we handle rehearsals. This is how we handle the rain plan. This is how we handle communication. And it was more so like our venue Bible per se. It's like, this is what we go by. We referred to that document in our contract, but it wasn't actually in our contract. And I'm fine if you tell me that's not good because I sold my venue. So anyway, you can tell me now. So basically, we had like 3 parts to the contract, and I'm so glad you brought this up because I just felt like the contract part of it, like the legalese, I wanted to keep that the legalese and then refer in that to a policy and guideline. Did I do that wrong, or is that an okay way to do that?
That is an okay way to do it. You just have to be really careful about the language around it because the language should say something to the effect of like, let's call it house rules. Like the house rules that you receive are hereby incorporated by reference into this contract. That way
Yes.
it basically makes those terms applicable to the contract. And that is absolutely fine way to do that. Cause yeah, you don't need to like, your contract doesn't have to say like, okay, you're gonna have to make the rain call by like 10 a.m. the morning of or something like that. But yeah, so that is a totally fine way to handle that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that affirmation. Yes. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So, okay. So, number one, you said set expectations. So,
Yeah.
some of the other pitfalls.
Yeah. Set expectations. Make sure that contract is backing up the things that you are providing, so they know what they are getting, what their money is paying for. The next big thing in this is, I mean, it's still, even since 2020, I find that people's force majeure rescheduling and cancellation provisions just leave a lot of room for ambiguity, things being unclear, leave a lot of room for interpretation, leave a lot of room for disputes. I feel like I talked to somebody, I don't remember who it was, but I may have heard somebody say like they don't actually address, they want to stay silent on force majeure and rescheduling and cancellation so as to give themselves the most flexibility and how to respond to those situations. And I was like,
They must not have been in business in 2020.
I was like, very interesting take. I hate that idea for you.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And so, like, the way that my brain thinks of these provisions is very much sort of flow chart like, because it's kind of like, okay, if it is force majeure, is it impacting like the whole area? Because I kind of think for venues, and this is where it gets so complicated when I draft contracts for venues, like, I kind of think there can be an arguable difference between a hurricane coming through a town or city and nobody being able to do anything versus like your venue just catches on fire the day of and what the responsibility could be for that. I can see those kind of being like distinguishable force majeure events, even both are force majeure. But yeah, so you got to like really do kind of flow chart almost like if this occurs, then this happens. Like if a force majeure event happens and we can't host the wedding, we try to reschedule. You get 12 months to try to find, like 12 months is how far out you can go. If we can't find a new date, then that gets treated as a cancellation. If it's a cancellation within this much time, do you pay us the balance? Are we refunding you? Like, we just got to follow like we got to go down that whole rabbit hole of like,
some
here
people
are the
want
things that
to.
can happen.
Yeah, people want to. And they literally will say, well, what will you do? I've literally had people say, what will you do if the venue burns down? I'm like, yeah, it's a interesting thing to answer. Like, first of all, I'll be very sad. Like, but of course, I answered it and I was professional. But I really actually like what you're saying. I didn't do that, but I see the wisdom in it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, my approach with contracts is they obviously can't be so specific that they're going to address like everything by name because then your contract is like 30 pages long and nobody's
Exactly.
reading that. But we want to make
they're not
sure
reading it now, let's be honest. A lot of
people. I hate to admit that. I know it's a problem.
So true.
But then you want to balance that with like making sure we're covering a lot of things in a potentially general way. So that way, like all these things that we never could think of can get covered by something if we're making sure we're careful with the language being broad enough. So I want your contract to be specific enough so that I don't want there to be questions when things go wrong. Like,
right.
I'm a big believer that if something goes wrong, if somebody's not doing what they're supposed to, the contract should have the answer for that.
Yeah.
And so that is like my approach to contract drafting. So like we're not going to name every little thing, but we are going to try to make sure that for the foreseeable things we can think of, like if they happen, the contract's going to tell us what to do.
No, I love that. So let's kind of rabbit trail a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
you talked about cancellations. And so
Mm.
this is something that it is actually a very big discussion point because, and maybe I err on the wrong side on this, but I was very forceful about the fact that they were in a binding contract with me because I felt like I've read contracts, many of them, that allow people to cancel up to 30 days
Yep.
with a refund
Yep.
and a venue. And I'm like, you guys, that's absolutely insane because it's not like bakers that could do 10 cakes in a day. It's like you have one space and you've reserved that space for them. And most people aren't going to book their wedding 30 days out, right? And so I have a big problem with people putting that in their contracts. First of all, I would love your feedback about that. But in ours, I basically said this is not my legalese, but it's a binding contract. You are due to pay this full contract, whether honestly you get married or not. Like personal circumstances aren't my problem. Now, to be fair, if someone broke up and they came to me, what I would do at that point is I say to them, well, you're in a binding contract. You signed a binding contract for this full contract. However, because I'm a nice person, I'm going to give you a general release. We're going to cancel this. I'm going to cancel all future payments. But you signed this saying that it was non-refundable, so I'm not giving you a penny back. So that was something that was actually COVID era that taught me a lot. And that was something that I changed like 5 years ago. And I felt like every time I came to people and I'm like, you're in a binding contract, but I'm going to let you out of your future payments, they were, instead of being annoyed at me, they were super grateful almost every single time. And I never once made someone pay a contract if they broke up or, I never ever did that if they didn't have a wedding. So again, tell me your thoughts about how I handled that and what you would recommend, how you recommend people to handle cancellation. And I'm okay if you tell me, Tirzah, you're crazy.
No,
That's fine.
well, first I want to distinguish because what you brought up is a really good point. I want to distinguish between the cancellation of the event itself and terminating the contract because I don't think they should be able to terminate. I don't think either party should be able to terminate the contract without cause.
I agree.
Yeah. So like I've actually seen what you said. I've seen it in reverse where venues actually had a free termination right to terminate at any time during up to the day of the event, and all they had to do was give the money back and then they'd be off the hook. Which when I was the planner, I never let my clients sign anything like that because they could screw you. Your venue could terminate 2 days before the event under the contract, so validly, and just give you your money back and be like, oh, we're fine. If anybody here is listening and you have that right in your contract, please
Change it.
Please change it. We're talking, like you said, this is a contractual obligation. The venue are agreeing to provide these people with a place for their event. The people hosting the event are agreeing to do this at your venue. We should only be terminating for cause. And then if we have a cancellation of the event, I believe, like my policy is there should be a date where if they cancel within a certain amount of time, certain number of days close to the event, you still get paid in full.
Yes.
And there's varying degrees of like, okay, let's say if they terminate 3 to 6 months out, maybe they pay like 50% of the remainder. Like there's a variety of policies you can have. But I want to make sure that you're getting compensated because if
They
things
took your inventory.
Right. And if they
Yeah.
break, like, why is their breakup your problem? I mean, and to say this, like, to your point, there's always that consideration of business decision versus legal decision. Your contract might allow you to do one thing, and it might have been a situation where one of the people getting married, like, passed away in a really tragic way.
Yes. Yes.
And you might feel like, I don't want to keep any of your money here. Please have all of this back. Even though like
100%.
my contract might let me collect my final balance, like I want to give this all back to you. You're right. You have the absolute discretion to do that. And you brought that up at the beginning of like when you don't like the risk of not sticking to your contract terms. It was kind of almost a rumor going around during COVID where people were like, if you make an exception to your contract for one person, you end up in court and they find out that you refunded one person, the court's going to like make you refund everybody, which I think was a myth. I'm not sure where that story.
I've heard that. I've heard
where
that.
it
Yeah.
originated from. And the idea is like your contract is discretionary, and just because you're giving one person money back under a certain set of circumstances does not mean you have to give somebody that same treatment somewhere else. And
But people
especially,
talk and
yeah.
Reddit is real. And that's my caveat to what you
Oh,
just said is
yes.
that
Yes,
people
yes.
talk, Reddit real. And Reddit I've seen destroy businesses. Like I know of someone right now that Reddit is destroying their business because
Yes.
of just one situation.
Yes. So that is why I've started adding confidentiality provisions into
Yes.
all of my clients' contracts that makes, like, obviously your proprietary business information confidential, but it makes the terms of the agreement confidential, including pricing. It also makes your correspondence confidential, because what I have seen is in those Reddit threads where people are slamming businesses, they're screenshotting emails and text messages. And I'm like, no, this is not happening. And so
Yeah.
if you have a situation, like what you need to do if you are making an exception and you're giving somebody money back, document it in an agreement and make it clear that the terms of that, whatever you want to call it, settlement agreement, termination agreement, the terms of that agreement are confidential. Because then if somebody goes blabbing that they got however much money back from you, they have now breached your contract.
Yes. My attorney advised me the same. And I actually think that's I don't know, you see more contracts than me. I haven't seen that people have that in their
No, they don't.
contracts, but
No.
venues.
No.
So I want to keep sitting on this cancellation thing for a second because one of the things that I also see is that people, when they cancel, they aren't officially going through the documentation of actually canceling that contract. They're just
Mm,
letting it phase out and they're just like, okay, well, they come to terms maybe in email. And I don't know, again, that was one thing COVID taught me is he was like, even if you're moving people's dates, you need to do a general release to basically a cancellation of that prior date and then a brand new set of document like start fresh with a new date. And I did that with I had I think 64 postponements that I had to go through in that
mm.
period of time. And it was more paperwork for me, but he was basically like this keeps it much more clean and tidy doing it this way. And so that was a COVID thing. But even now, when people cancel, I have them sign a general release because it has something very important I want them to sign, and it has a non disparagement clause in it. And I know there's very mixed feelings about that, but I'm like, and it also has the confidentiality in it. So, um,
So
anyway,
let's talk about the non-disparagement. Okay, so I want everybody to know, and they can go Google this after they finish listening, and maybe you can put it in the show notes. There is a thing called the Consumer Review Fairness Act.
okay, I'm so glad you brought this up because okay, go. I'm
Yes.
so excited.
Okay. It's
Okay.
passed. I believe it was passed in 2016, and it prevents people from putting contractual language that says you cannot leave me a bad review. So that is it. That is illegal. That is unenforceable. And for people that want to still try it, you run the risk of, if you run into a savvy client or a client who has a savvy lawyer friend who, if there's a dispute and they see your contract, they will report you for having that like even trying it, even though it's not valid. Like, you run the risk of that coming back to bite you just for having. Now, there is 2 related points. Number one, there's potentially language you can have that would be enforceable.
Mine is
So
about social media and like public. I don't think it says anything about reviews. It's more so like public, like defamation and that kind of thing. I should have pulled it out actually. I forgot we were going to have this coming, but yeah.
so the good news is defamation is illegal all the time, regardless
Uh-huh.
of what's in your contract. And so defamation, the like subparts of defamation are libel and slander, but defamation is somebody making false statements about you publicly that injures your business.
Uh-huh.
So even if your contract says nothing, you are always protected under the law against defamation, which is something I always remind people of, because that tends to be their thing. They're like, well, I don't want them making false statements. And so
Right.
they're always protected from that. I think what you have to do is make sure that if you are putting like a non-disparagement type provision in your contract, it needs to be focused around the falsity of
Uh-huh.
the
Agreed.
things in there.
Agreed.
Don't use the word don't use the word negative. I feel like don't use the word, you can't really even use the word disparaging, because you can make a disparaging remark about someone, but it might not be false. So Yeah, it's
Okay.
very tricky.
I know that everyone that's listening is like, okay, give me more. Okay, so let's talk about the fact that most people are not lawyer savvy. They don't understand. And my mindset kind of about it was I was like, I know the general population, if I just put it in there, it scares them enough that maybe they wouldn't do that. And I don't know if that's a really bad mindset, but it's just like, I don't know the balance of that's actually really bad for you to have in a contract, to have, terminology about not, defamation and all that kind of stuff, libel. Or is it good kind of to have at least something in there that's like, hey, like we're doing this in good faith. You also need to, not harm our business, basically. Layman's
Yeah, I
term.
mean, it really gets down to how it's phrased. Because if you do say, if your clause says something like like the parties agree that they won't defame one another, that's 100% legal because that's what's required at law. Like you can't do that. So that's totally fine. It is so particular about the specific language. Also, frankly, it's going to vary state by state because states are going to have different
Uh-huh.
opinions on how they enforce non-disparagement. Also, I'm also just throwing it out there, like the context matters too,
Yes.
because saying it like having just regular non-disparagement language in your rental agreement is one thing, but if you're negotiating a settlement or a termination with somebody,
Good
there's
point.
arguments there that like I'm refunding this money to you in exchange for your promise to not say anything publicly. So I try to, just because of the uncertainty of like the enforcement of a non-disparagement provision and it getting you in trouble, I prefer to rely on like defamation being illegal in general and also that confidentiality provision. I think that is
Yes.
the way that we
Yeah.
kind of try to achieve a similar protection without running the
I
risk
like that.
of, yeah. And I will say to your point about like not thinking that you've got savvy clients or maybe savvy like lawyers. I was watching a lawyer do a presentation the other day and she said something that validated something for me because she was like, you better believe that if I have a dispute with somebody else over, like if I'm representing like a wedding pro who's got a dispute with somebody, or if I'm representing the couple who's got a dispute with the wedding pro, she's like, I'm going to look beyond the specific issue at hand. So if somebody is like, let's say, I mean, I know we have venues, but the example that comes off the top of my head is a photographer. So let's say a couple is really upset with their photography photos and they hire this savvy lawyer and the lawyer's trying to get money back from the photographer. This lawyer was implying that she's not just going to look at like the quality of the photos or what the contract says. She's going on your website to make sure you have a valid privacy policy. For example, she's probably checking to make sure that like you are qualified to do business in the state. She's probably checking to make sure, depending on what you do, if you have the required licenses. So it's like the fact like having a invalid non-disparagement provision clause potentially really opens the door when you've got somebody savvy on the other side.
So I'm going to
Not
say
to
this.
scare the crap out of
No,
everybody.
no, no. I want them to be scared. People should be scared. You shouldn't be in business if you're not willing to engage in this hard. Listen, like it frustrates me actually sometimes when people have this scarcity mindset when they start any kind of business, right? And it's just like, oh, like they're pinching pennies everywhere and they're like not wanting to invest where they need to invest. Like you need to invest in a lawyer if you're going to be in business because like they can make or break it. Like if something happens, like they are so important to have in your corner. Okay, which circles me back to something that drives me nuts.
Yes.
And I'm in all of these Facebook groups. Lord help me. And two things come up all the time. Number one, I was in a group and I coached in this group for 3+ years. And the head of this group had a contract sharing club of some kind, and they all just share their contracts with each other. Then now that was several years ago. Now with AI being out there, then we have that. And it's like, hey, and someone will be like, hey, where do you get your contract? Can someone post your contract in the group for me to look at? And I'm like, Lord up in heaven, I spent $5,000 to have a lawyer do that for, and you're just going to take, not that I don't want to share, but also I think that there's some like big risk around that too. So I had a client came to me and I, of course, like I told you, I always look at the contract first. And I was reading it and I was like, this is all over the place. I'm so confused. Even the way the tone of it feels different. And I said, where did you get this? And she goes, well, I'm in one of those contract sharing groups. And I just picked and spliced all of the pieces from the different ones that I saw. And I was just click. I didn't know people were that silly. So, okay, rant over. Talk to me, Leah.
I mean, wow, we have so many things here. Like, I will say when I do my talks, like one of my pieces of my talks is about how much I don't like it when people Frankenstein their contracts together. I don't like it because a lot of times they do that. They start with a contract that a colleague had, and then they copy and paste stuff from Google, and then they take stuff from people in Facebook groups. And I'm always like, stop taking legal advice from people in Facebook groups.
Okay, say that again. What was that?
Stop taking legal advice from people in Facebook groups. Please.
It's some
Please.
little 80-year-old lady that's just like, I shouldn't say that, but I'm just like, you don't know what kind of archaic information you're getting. And that's why I'm saying that. It's like, you don't know if this is relevant. You don't know, like, laws change so fast. And that's why
So
in
that's
state to state.
Here's a perfect example. Here's a great example and related to venues. So like one of my a list of like reasons why you shouldn't do that is number one, you can risk getting conflicting provisions in there because if you don't understand legal drafting, you might copy something from here that conflicts with your cancellation policy.
100%.
You're not going to understand it. It's probably not going to be cohesively drafted, like with defined terms and things like that. But one of the big risks is you can put something in there that is not enforceable in your state or that could be illegal in your state.
Yep.
Perfect example, passing along credit card processing fees to your clients. Depending on what state you are in, you are either fully allowed to do it. You are allowed to do it with certain limitations. You can't do it at all. Or like if you're in New York, you have to word it where here's the price, but if you pay by cash or check, you get a discount of 3%. So like you're copying and pasting, you have no idea if that's enforceable. Also, another relevant example for venues here in New York, there are very particular laws over your administrative fees or your service charges.
Service charges.
And how you have to word that. And I mean, New York gets so specific. They're like, it's got to be like in all caps, in bold, like in 12-point font. It's got to appear here. It's got to appear here, just so that it's clear that those are not actually gratuities going to your team members. And there is plenty of litigation where employees bring an action against their employer trying to argue that, oh, they didn't have the proper like signage and disclosures, so all of this money should be ours. And so if you don't have an attorney and you're taking language from somebody else, you're going to not have any idea. So do not and please do not draft your contract with ChatGPT. I also frankly don't even want to tell you. So I think ChatGPT honestly, no. Okay, ChatGPT makes stuff up. I have heard stories of people who like tried to use lawyers who tried to use ChatGPT in like helping them draft stuff like briefs, motions, things for court. And ChatGPT legit just made up court cases that did not exist. And so I recently saw somebody who was like, use ChatGPT as a fact checker so you can see all the sources. But no, ChatGPT is making up those sources. So what I was going to say was it might be helpful if you need like layman's terms, how to understand, like if you need help understanding something. But frankly, just go to Google for that and then make sure you're checking sources. Like if there's a law you're looking for a summary on or a legal concept you don't understand, like if you want to learn what indemnity means, email me or Google and I'll send you a video or Google it. And when I tell people to Google, like Google is a valid place for doing like understanding some legal stuff, but you got to be careful what websites you're using. Always your like number one preference is always getting information from a government website. So like if you're wondering, these people that are working for me, should they be employees or independent contractors? You are 100% welcome to Google employees versus independent contractors, Texas. And then you will get a link to like the Texas government website that lays it all out for you. And then a second great place too is also blogs that law firms have posted. Because like those are trusted sources for that information. So please stay off of ChatGPT. Do not draft your contracts with it. Maybe ask it to explain legal concepts to you, but then even then I worry that it's going to get it wrong. So,
It's like I liken it to you have some suspicious like chest pain and you go to WebMD and then all of a sudden before you
yeah.
know it you're dead in like 3 to 6 days.
Yeah.
Like cuz WebMD told me I'm dying. And so it's just like you can't like any doctor I've ever been to is like for the love do not go on WebMD. Send us an email in the portal. Like
Yes.
go directly to the source, right? So, I don't know, to me it's just like ChatGPT is WebMD, like maybe even 100 times worse.
Yeah.
But okay, so since you mentioned the sexy word indemnity, let's talk about that. So
God.
there, buckle up, listeners. Okay, this may go this. Listen, come back to this chat if it's getting long for you because this is a very important topic. Or just stay with us if you're listening because this is really important.
Hang in there. Hang in there. I
Hang
know
in
it's a
there.
lot. We're blowing your minds today.
So good though. It's so good. And also let me just say, please send me a message, make a note if you're listening, whatever platform you're in. Just also you could send me an email. All of that is in the podcast. If you want more specific questions answered, I'm happy to have Leah back. She already agreed to that. Give us your questions and
Yeah, we
we'll
could do
do our
like just a
best.
Q&A
A
episode.
Q&A.
Love
Absolutely.
that.
We should.
Love
Yes.
that.
Okay. So here's my question for you. There's been buzz around the fact that there are some venues that are not only requiring vendors to obviously be licensed and insured and give them their proof of insurance, right? But they're also taking it to the next level and they're saying, hey, like, we want you to get in a contract vendor. We want you, vendor, to get in a contract with us as a venue where it's like an extra layer of protection for the venue, basically. So, indemnity provisions. Just talk about that with us.
Yeah.
Explain kind of the pitfalls at that too.
Yeah, I don't love it for a few reasons. Number one, let me just say, totally valid to make sure that all the vendors that are working on your property have insurance. Totally valid to request that COI to be added as an additional insured. And just by virtue of your state laws, without a contract, a vendor who messes up really bad is going to be responsible for what they've done. In most states, I would say probably gross negligence and willful misconduct. You can never avoid being responsible for that with a contract. So if somebody is on your property and they do something really bad, they're going to be held responsible for it. I don't love it you as a venue have a contract with your clients. In theory, that contract should be broad enough that your client is the one responsible for what their vendors do. It's kind of like now that I'm thinking about it, we're kind of in like a circle here. So like your clients are responsible for you sign a contract with the couple signs contracts with all of their vendors. Photographer messes up, knocks a sculpture over, I don't know. Accidentally breaks something on the property. The venue should make a claim against the couple for the property damage, and then the couple then goes to their vendor and the couple recovers from the vendor. So I was wrong. It is not a circle. I don't want it to be a circle.
So I was gonna play it out because I'm like, I'm gonna trust you here.
Yes, I don't want that is it. I don't want it to be a circle. I want it to be
the end of that circle.
I want it to be a straight line. I want it to be a straight line so that venue recovers from couple recovers from vendor who did the thing.
Yes.
And also, like, you as a venue are going to have your own insurance. So, like, some things, like, depending on how small they are, like, should just kind of be like wear and tear kind of cost of business type thing. Because I will say that I get vendors all the time who come to me and they're like, this venue needs me to sign this. And I'm always in a pickle because I'm like, I don't want you to sign it because you are making yourself so heavily liable to the venue. But I also realize that venues aren't going to let them take a step on the property without having that done in advance. So like one of my goals, and I'm so glad we're talking about this, is I want the venues to hear that just from from a liability standpoint, that is going to protect your venue to the utmost. But I don't like it in terms of like fairness as a practice for the industry. Because if you're a photographer and every time you're on site, not only are you at risk of being sued by your clients, but you're also at risk for any little thing you do at the venue, causing you to have to be responsible for them, that could put you out of business depending on what happens. And so I always look at this whole relationship and like the microcosm of the wedding industry is just an allocation of like risk and liability. And within
Exactly.
each situation, who should be taking on what things. And so I am just a big believer that venues need to be looking to their couples for recourse if something happens. And then if it was the fault of a vendor to a certain extent, the couple's going to have recourse against that vendor. Yeah.
And it actually circles back to this insurance conversation that I was having
Yes.
with
Yes.
Justin, because it's like limiting your risk is extremely important. So if you have like this really precious item that's just irreplaceable, don't have things like that in a place that has high traffic. Things could happen, it could be dangerous. I'll give you a small example of this because it was making me think about, we used to have this cocktail table up in our bridal suite, and we had just had it forever and it was probably needed to go anyway, but it had this really heavy marble top on it. But marble, it wasn't like affixed to it because it's so heavy. It just kind of sat on top of it. Well, the photographers would always want to move it and they didn't realize like how heavy it was. So this is just an example of things that are very real that do happen. And I understand from the venue perspective how annoying it is when vendors come in. Even had a sign on it, which I didn't even like having the sign on it, but it was basically like, hey, photographers, please don't move this table. It destroyed our floor. It scratched it all up. I'm so afraid that marble would fall and like destroy someone's foot.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, whose responsibility was that table? It's like mine, right? Like I'm the one that put that table there to begin with. So when I was looking at it from a risk perspective, I'm like, no table. We put a bench, deal done.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I'm not annoyed that the photographer's moving it around. So I just want you guys as venues to just really take this in from a legal perspective, from an insurance perspective. It all kind of goes together. From our liabilities are huge, it's huge. And people, they do want to come after venues because we have the bigger pockets usually, when it comes to wedding industry people. So this is such a great thing. If you don't know what indemnity is, it's too big of a conversation. You need to, like she
I'm glad you
said,
didn't ask me to do that.
no, go Google it, or we could circle back. We don't have time for that today. We're going to end with one last, like, little lob this to you thing. The fun question about using the word deposit in a contract. Is this too big? I don't know if it's too big. Talk to me about that. I know how I feel about it. I feel like people have gotten better educated post-COVID. I mean, COVID sucked, man, but we learned so much as business owners.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, COVID happening probably is what also helps me like be able to have success in starting this business, because everybody it confirmed 100% the value of you need a lawyer and you need a strong contract. So like 100%. COVID did my sales, and COVID was my marketing. My marketing efforts before I even had a business.
Trying to not have a stroke, and Leah's like, yeah, baby, bring it. Okay. So talk to me about the word deposits.
Yes. Okay. So
I mean, it's too big, I know, but just tell me what you want to say about that. It could just be short and sweet.
Okay, I will try to keep it as short and sweet as possible. Deposit and retainer technically do mean different things. Deposit is money paid towards a future service. It is not earned until that future service is performed. A retainer serves a function on day one. That retainer reserves a date of the event, compensates you for committing to provide the services, compensates you for turning down other work. So on their own, in a vacuum, they are different. And so it shows so when you say that the retainer is non-refundable, you've got backing on that. Now, so as a general rule, let's just always use the word retainer. Like, we don't need to have the discussion. Let's just always call it a retainer.
Yes.
But the asterisk to that is, are there situations where a deposit would be validly non-refundable? And the answer is yeah, depending on what your contract says. Like, you can justify a deposit being non-refundable if your contract language makes it very clear that it's non-refundable and why it's non-refundable. So in a vacuum, they are different. Can deposits be non-refundable? Yes, based on the contract language. I mean, and retainers can be refundable in certain situations based on the contract language.
So is the phrase non-refundable deposit an oxymoron? Like, it does putting non-refundable in front of deposit, if it's for a future service, does it even help the word?
I think it does, but I think you also still have to take it a step further.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've
based on the
seen that
language.
a lot too, where people say non-refundable deposit, and I'm just like, I like the non-refundable language. I think that's
Yep.
very
Yeah.
understood by the average person that understands they're signing a non-refundable. Now, the times that I have seen that it does make sense to have a refundable deposit is for like people that do like a damage deposit.
Yeah.
And
Security deposits. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
would make sense to do that. But and my encouragement to you, and I know Leah agrees with
Just use the
this
word
pretty
retainer.
sure, is say retainer
Just say
and
retainer.
just go into use the search function in your documents and just look up anywhere where you said the word deposit. Look it up in your policies and guidelines and any of your documents, and just switch it. It might not feel like a big thing, but I think in the end it could potentially make a big difference.
Yeah.
So
That's what find and replace is for. Find and replace. You can
exactly.
just do it all in one swoop. It's easy.
Listen, boomers. Now, this is what my kids say to me, and I'm not even a boomer. I'm just going to say, listen, boomers, Google it. It's so great. Just Google it. Get rid of it. There's so much more that we could talk about. This
God,
is
yes.
so very important. People are so like sue crazy, I feel like. And,
They are.
especially with venues, I told this story a few months ago in the podcast, but you probably didn't hear this, but a girl that she was like, I don't know, she kept wanting to flash people and whatever. It was gross. She didn't have her panties on and she just she fell and went back like this and like flashed my manager or whatever. Said she twisted her ankle. And we have cameras in our reception space. There is split opinions about if that is wise or not, but we did. And she was up on the dance floor all night long, dancing her little, sexy self away. And she came to us the very next day and said that she was going to sue us because she tripped on the porch. And I was like, girlfriend, we have proof that you did not, like that you were fine. But that just kind of comes back to this whole thing of like, you have to cover your bases.
Yeah.
People, they see a venue, and this is my point, ADHD here. My point is they see a venue and they see a cash cow, and they see, oh, like, what can I do? I'm going to trip and hurt my ankle, and I'm going to sue these people. And, I basically, in that situation, I took a screenshot of her message to me and I sent it to her friend, and I was like, hey, like, I know I dealt with her. I looked at her ankle. We gave her all of the things that we could do. And I have proof that she danced all night and you saw it. And the bride just sent her a text and said, stop it. We never heard from her again. But again, like, we have to be wise. You shouldn't own a venue if you're not willing to take the extra step of spend the thousands of dollars. Like, stop it. Like, it's the
Yes,
best
you
money that
have
you'll
to.
ever spend.
If you're, yeah, especially as venues, like, come on. I mean, you shouldn't be, you have to have significant capital to get a property off the ground. Like, you should
Put it in.
take some of that and spend it on a lawyer. Yeah.
So tell people like what it is that you can do for them. Like,
Yeah.
what are some of the services that you offer for venues? Tell us how we could get in touch with you. Obviously, we'll have that in the show notes, and you can follow her. So yeah, tell us what you do for venues.
Yeah, so venues, I can help you with your rental agreements. So this is all caveated with, I'll give the list of my states. So my firm practices in a certain number of states. So within those states, we can help you with your venue rental agreement. And we can talk to you about employees and independent contractors, like as you're building out a team, anybody that's leasing property, we can help in some places with leases, things like that. Client disputes. So when you do have those clients coming back after the wedding saying, hey, we want money back, I help folks with that all the time. The states that that my firm practices in are New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Georgia, Florida, Illinois, Texas, and California. If you are a venue and you need trademark help, that is something that no matter where you're located, my firm can help with. So if you have a venue that's got a particularly unique name that you have invested a lot of money in marketing and branding and things like that, getting a trademark is always helpful because it prevents somebody from opening something out, using that name for something else in the event space that might cause confusion. So those types of like trademark, copyright stuff, intellectual property, we can do nationwide.
And I'm so glad that you said that. I'm literally working with a client right now where his venue has been around for about 15 years, and a new venue just popped up with the same exact name, and he hadn't trademarked his. It's messed up. It's super messed up.
Yeah.
And he really has no recourse, honestly. Like, it's a dirty situation. So no, this is such an important conversation. I'm so grateful for you guys. Listen, go follow Leah. What is your Instagram handle? I know you just got a new one.
Yes. So my personal is at the Leah Weinberg, and my business one is at Weinberg Legal. And then website is easy. It's Weinberg Legal. So yeah, would love to do a Q&A episode. I'm sure your audience has a lot of questions that would keep us occupied for another episode.
100%. We're coming back for you. So thank you again for joining me today, Leah. This has been really great. And
Yeah,
for
this was
the
awesome.
viewers, yeah, I know that we will definitely circle back. But thank you for listening, for watching, wherever you're tuning in today. We just really appreciate you and your support of the Venue Success podcast. So we'll see you next time.